the priorities. There are 10 priorities in this declaration, and these are the priorities on which a lot hangs. So there's been a lot of discussion what these priorities should be, the order of these priorities, and the action plan about which I will show you nothing more in a moment. The action plan gives actions under the headings of each of these priorities. So these are quite significant. And you can see again that the top priority is to protect children and young people with intellectual disabilities from harm and abuse. Again, it's so central. If that's not there, what are we talking about? Enable children and young people to grow up in a family environment. The transfer of care from institutions to the community. Now, those are the key, this is the key triad. So, no harm and abuse, create a family environment, and transfer care from institutions to the community. And the others really follow from that. The need to identify the needs of each child and young people, and the assurance that good quality mental and physical health care is coordinated and sustained. And then the next 5, again you can see they follow from these key statements. Safeguard health and well-being of family carers, a very key point from many NGOs who are involved, such as Inclusion Europe and also Autism Europe. The emphasis that families and carers need support in their own right because of the stress and also because of the financial burden that caring can put on them. The empowerment of children and young people worked out in the declaration, a bit more than this, but how can we give a voice to these children rather than just making them dependent in the community? And then the last 3 points, which are more technical but very crucial. How can we build a workforce capacity and commitments? How do we deal with these places in some countries in Central and Eastern Europe where the workforce is as institutionalized as the children? It's not a question of just simply closing these institutions. What do we do with the staff? Communities that rely on the economy of these care homes. How do we retrain people? Some probably have to be made redundant, pensioned off. Others should be able to move with these children into the community, but need a total change of attitude after sometimes working for 10 to 20 years in these places. The 9th point relates to what I talked earlier about, the collection of essential information. All as we start there, what are we achieving? The very final point is an important point again, they're all important points. Create fair investment. And the specific point we make in the declaration, that these children need more than their equal share. They have higher needs. So children with intellectual disabilities and also children with autism do not just need the same amount as every other child. They need more if we want to give them equal chances based on needs. So, ambitious points, and they have been accepted so far by representatives from countries. And we very much hope that we will be able to persuade in Bucharest for countries to sign up to this. And I would expect they will, but one never quite knows what happens at the last moment in a plenary session such as this, where suddenly someone wakes up and say, hang on, I don't like that word. And that will be interesting. We'll have to deal with that. So where are we? What is the timeline? You can see how long this has taken. The first idea was in April 2008. Then Romania offered it in June 2008 at an EC conference. And then you can see initial steering group. Originally, the conference was due to take place in December 2009. But there has been a lot of political developments. The government in Romania fell. There was a new prime minister, a new president. We had a new regional director. It coincided with an EC meeting, and we had to find a good date. So in the end, we came up, and this was after money was withdrawn as well. We then decided to go ahead on the 26th and 27th of November. I have to say that the whole organization of this conference is almost a metaphor for what's happening in intellectual disability as a whole. Everyone cares, no one wants to invest, and it's no one's top priority. Everyone cares tremendously, but it's very hard to put it really on an agenda and to make people come specially to give it some great attention. It's beginning to happen, but it's hard work, and let's see what happens in November, because it will be symbolic to the extent to which this is on the real agenda for ministers of health. Now the last bit I want to show you is just a bit about follow-up, because so often these conferences are endpoints. We have a conference, we have a declaration, we go home again and we move on to diabetes. There's always an element of that, but the challenge for us with our lower resources is how we can create somewhat ongoing work. I mean, how can we, well, we don't need to energize you, but how can we make you work with us? How can we work with Inclusion Europe? How can we work with governments, with all these local NGOs in countries? How can we stimulate them? Now, the key thing actually is that we do not believe we are the natural leaders in this field. We want to create opportunities. We want to create a space others can fill and others can work in. You can go to ministries after November and say, look, there is this declaration. What does this mean for us? We are not in a position to lead that and then tell you, look, do something. So it's this partnership that is for us very crucial, which is also why we're so keen to have UNICEF involved. But it's also why we really involved NGOs to an unusually big extent. The steering group, and actually mostly NGOs. There were no formal government representatives. So the NGOs have been very involved in the formulation of the declaration and the action plan. And what you can see, that there's a lot of support we can offer within our remit. We have to, as WHO, support strategy work, coordinate research, monitor the health, facilitate international benchmarking. But the actual action we can initiate. And let me give you an example of how we work. We have a contract with a country. We call it a BCA, a bilateral country agreement. Some money is put to that. And then we need to find people we can work with to achieve some of these objectives. And that can often be an NGO or local experts who then is, under our guidance or with funding from us, able to achieve, for example, a new strategy or a pilot service somewhere in the country. So there will be opportunities. Now, 2 more slides.
No, professore, siamo già... abbiamo superato il tempo.
Sorry?
Qualcuno che lo traduca. Abbiamo superato il tempo.
You want me to stop?
Concesso. Ok, qualche altro minuto.
Ok, I stop.
No, qualche altro minuto. Ok.
So, let me just show. First of all, this is a sentence about NGOs in the declaration. And then I'll stop. But I thought you might just be interested what's actually in the declaration about the specific role of NGOs. And what you can see is that we invite non-government organizations with a few sentences to make it very clear that we're actually not going to change your constitutions, to become fully involved as active partners and to support governments in implementing this declaration. And what we're trying to achieve at the moment is that we can have NGO representation to co-sign the declaration together with the regional director of WHO and high-level functionaries from UNICEF and the Minister of Health who signs on behalf of other Ministers of Health. So we want to create a strong involvement and commitment from NGOs. The sense now is, the problem now is that we need to find representation from NGOs who can sign it, because we cannot have 50 NGOs signing it. So I'll leave it at there. I hope you agree this one might matter. Autism Europe is strongly involved, and I'm very grateful, and Autism Europe is going to be there represented. And I hope I can report back in a couple of years that this has changed a little bit the quality of life and the health of children with autism spectrum disorders, and children with intellectual disability as a whole. So thank you very much for your attention, and I hope to talk to some of you over the next few years. Thank you.